Now, don't worry. I'm not about to go all Jordan Peterson 12 rules for life on your ass. This is just some stuff that helped me. Some of it is evidence-based, and some of it is just based. But these are 10 habits I wish I'd incorporated 10 years ago that would have helped a lot in terms of my health, my productivity, and more. The first one is getting some form of physical activity in daily. Now, I could wax poetic about the benefits of physical activity, like your local health agency. The truth is, we all know physical activity is good for you. However, for me specifically, it is something I was lacking in 10 years ago. When I was 15, I started having chronic insomnia. I would often spend 14 or more hours in bed, struggling to get even 5 hours of sleep in. As a result, I started missing school time and time again. I found it difficult to even make it to the gym. However, it turned out over time that I figured out that getting to the gym would then facilitate sleep in the future. It was a vicious and a virtuous cycle. If I didn't sleep well, I struggled to make it to the gym or get any exercise in. However, if I managed to turn it around and get to the gym, or just go for a walk, get some steps in, I would then improve my sleep, which would then have a virtuous cycle wherein that would make it easier to get to the gym and do some exercise next time. And look, I could go in depth and tell you all about how exercise is positive for all sorts of conditions, both for lowering your risk of getting in the first place and for managing symptoms. Things like depression, anxiety, cardiovascular disease, cancer, basically almost everything you can think of. But lifting and steps specifically have helped me out the most. So I aim to get some sort of activity in every day, whether it's aiming for 10,000 steps every day or lifting 4 to 5 days a week. Having something physical in every day has helped me out tremendously. But when should you aim to go to the gym? Well, there's two answers. On the one hand, when is best as far as stimulating hypertrophy and strength gains? The truth is, it doesn't really matter. The research suggests that different people have different preferences, different chronotypes, but as long as you're consistent in going to the gym at a certain time, these differences likely all wash out. And that's my big tip. Figure out what time you enjoy training at the most and make that consistent. When I first started going to college, I didn't have a consistent training time. In combination with my chronic insomnia and different things I was struggling with at the time, this made it very difficult to consistently get my workouts in. Scheduling your workouts at a time that is convenient and doing so consistently can help out tremendously with consistency. For me, I personally like training in the mornings when I've had some caffeine to really get me in the zone. The third tip is to incorporate coffee, but the right way. See, coffee, contrary to what many people think, is actually good for you. The biggest and most recent meta-analysis of all the studies on coffee consumption by Pro and colleagues in over 1 million individuals found that coffee consumption, if anything, was associated with better health. In fact, the biggest reduction in risk for all-cause mortality, cancer, cardiovascular disease, and more was seen at around 3 to 4 cups per day. Not only is coffee potentially beneficial for your health, for reasons we'll get to in a second, it can also be a great way to increase your productivity in the mornings. As a stimulant, coffee can help you focus on work more and enjoy your work more. It's also delicious. There are different reasons why researchers suspect coffee might be healthy for you. For instance, coffee actually has some fiber, it has some antioxidants, some polyphenols, and different things that could help improve your health. Alternatively, it's possible that people who consume more coffee tend to do so in social contexts, and generally being more sociable, as you'll see in a second, is also health promoting. So 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day, and that's all you need, right? Not quite. Because caffeine is a stimulant, having caffeine too late into the day can interfere with your sleep. How late is too late? Well, that's exactly what a meta-analysis by Gardiner and colleagues looked at just last year. With a relatively large dose of caffeine, exceeding around 200 milligrams or so, you should likely have it around 12 hours or more before your sleep time. So if you're going to have 3 or even 4 cups of coffee per day, it's very likely you should cap your caffeine consumption at least 12 hours before your bedtime. So if having more coffee in your life allows you to go to coffee shops, spend time with friends, loved ones, that's also a bonus. There's also some research suggesting that having filtered coffee might be more health promoting than having unfiltered coffee. So I typically opt for a filter machine. One of the habits I did start quite early as a lifter was taking creatine monohydrate, and for good reason. Creatine is arguably the most evidence-based supplement for helping you gain muscle and strength. And personally, I don't love the texture of creatine monohydrate powder. And so these gummies by Tasty Gains have been really helpful in helping me get my creatine in. If you're someone who struggles, I'll have a link in the description for you to check them out. The fourth habit I wish I'd started sooner was meditating. As much as I didn't believe it at first, there's actually a fair bit of research suggesting that mindfulness meditation, or even different types of meditation, are beneficial for improving mental health and brain function. Based on my understanding of the research, the exact type of meditation doesn't really seem to matter. The main thing that seems to matter is that you do it and that you stick with it. So without further ado, here's what I do. While I used to use apps like Headspace or Calm, and those are totally fine, I keep things even simpler nowadays. I simply sit down, lie down, anywhere, set a timer for 5 or 10 minutes, close my eyes, breathe through my nose, take a few deep breaths, and then focus on my breath, or at least try to, for 5 to 10 minutes. If I get distracted, I'll simply refocus my attention towards my breath, trying to do so compassionately. This fifth tip is more about productivity, and that's to set constraints. Have a schedule. I've been there. Work life ramps up. I juggle 5 different jobs, depending on what you qualify as a job. Things can get pretty intense, and it can very quickly get to the point where if you let it, your work will take up your whole day, and you might spend maximum an hour to a day relax. But here's the deal. If you set yourself a start time and an end time for each task, a start time and an end time for each workday, and specify what days of the week you're going to be working, especially for self-employed, that will really help. It will force you to 1, be efficient in how you work, and 2, make sure you maintain some semblance of work-life balance. Having an end time to a given task also makes it more fun, especially if that task is usually mundane, repetitive, or boring. Trying to beat your previously established PR can be a great way to make an otherwise uninspiring task a bit more engaging, and if nothing else, save you some time by forcing you to be more efficient. One habit I'll be incorporating for the next 10 years is using Milo. Using smart science-based algorithms, it will almost never give you the same workout twice. But at the same time, it makes sure you get enough volume, proximity to failure, frequency, and much more for each muscle to maximize muscle growth. It truly is the smart coach in your pocket. Go to mylab.com now to register your interest and be notified when it launches. You'll receive both a lifetime discount and a free trial. I've recently gone on record saying that high protein intakes are beneficial for building muscle. And that's something I used to struggle with. See, I used to struggle to get sufficient daily protein in because I didn't follow this habit. Most people have at least 3 meals a day. And if you focus on getting at least some protein in with each meal, you will likely get pretty close to your protein goal. Let's say you had a meal and you're with family and that meal happened to not really have any protein. You didn't have a choice. Have this as dessert. 38 grams of protein. Boom, you have some protein with that meal. There's always an option. You just gotta look for it. But the general habit of trying to find a protein source with every single meal can take you a long way towards meeting your protein goals. This next habit I neglected for years, and I think might just be the most underrated on this list. See, I used to focus a lot on getting at least 8 hours in bed every single night to make sure I got sufficient sleep in. And don't get me wrong, having this amount of time in bed can make you feel better the next day by being sufficiently well slept. But here's the truth. As far as the research goes, research doesn't consistently find the benefit of sleeping much more than around 7 or 8 hours for normal, healthy young adults. Instead, there's something else that seems to be much more predictive of health when it comes to sleep, and that's sleep regularity. The consistency with which you go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. Researchers measure sleep regularity using the Sleep Regularity Index, and a lot of research finds a consistent association between sleep regularity and overall health. Here's how I implement this. I aim to have consistent sleep-wake times within roughly 1 hour of each other. Personally, I aim to go to bed around 11 p.m. and wake up around 8 a.m. So as long as I go to bed somewhere around between 10:30 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. and wake up somewhere between 7:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m., it's very likely that from a health perspective, I'm doing all I can. Now, does that mean that every single night you need to be perfectly on point with this? No. In fact, shift workers whose sleep-wake schedules are very inconsistent do suffer worse health, but it's a relatively small difference, and that's in the case of extreme dysregulation of consistent sleep-wake schedules. So just the occasional night off your schedule will not kill you. Now, there are times where I don't aim to be perfectly consistent, and that's actually my next tip. The number one reason why you might not want to be perfectly consistent always with your sleep-wake times is being sociable. And there is a very good reason to be sociable. Not only is having a social life fun, it's also actually beneficial to your health. So even if you're working a lot, or if you're taking your workout routine very seriously, at the expense of social time, try to take some time to be sociable. It's good for your health, it's good for your mental health, it will benefit you in many ways. This could just be a simple workout with a friend every now and then. It could be a meal out with your romantic partner. It could be anything, but make time to be sociable. When I was working a lot, as I still am, to be honest, it was difficult to find time to be sociable. Sometimes you have to schedule it in, but make it happen. It is good for your health. Other options include grabbing coffee with your friends, or even going for a walk to get your 10,000 steps in, or better yet, doing a some LinkedIn partials with your friends. My next tip is a bit of a meta habit, and that is to design your environment. This is something I pulled heavily from Atomic Habits by James Clear. The idea behind designing your environment is to make it easier to stick to certain habits by designing your environment in a way that makes it conducive to incorporating those habits. For example, I sometimes struggle with getting distracted by my phone when I'm working at my computer. One way to mitigate this issue and incorporate the habit of staying focused would be to put my phone away a few rooms away, so that then if I wanted to go on my phone, I would need to physically travel there and get my phone. As I mentioned earlier, one of my goals is to get consistent physical activity, and for me, that's aiming for 10,000 steps per day. I live in England, and in England, it rains quite often. To make it easier to get my 10,000 steps in, I modified my environment. Specifically, I keep hiking shoes near the door and a raincoat. Therefore, when it rains, it's much easier for me to get started on a walk than it would be if my raincoat and my hiking shoes were buried in a closet somewhere. This might seem obvious, but designing your environment can make a big difference to starting and maintaining healthy habits. The environment within which you exist does heavily influence what behaviors you tend to perform. So whenever you're trying to incorporate a new habit, try to think of the ideal environment to be performing that habit within, and try to redesign your environment to facilitate that behavior. This applies to things like dieting, like activity, like staying focused during work, and many other things. Another example of this is with consuming fruits. There's many reasons why fruits and vegetables are likely to be health promoting, including, for example, high fiber content, which is also independently associated with better health, micronutrients, polyphenols, antioxidants, many things. Long story short is, more fruits and vegetables, likely better for your health. The 10th habit I wish I incorporated earlier, which might seem obvious, is getting in sufficient fruits and vegetables every day. I grew up quite a picky eater, so growing up, I didn't really have many fruits or vegetables consistently. What I didn't know is that the research strongly supports the role of having more fruits and vegetables in your diet for health. Research finds a pretty consistent and substantial reduction in your all-cause mortality risk, going from 0 to 400 grams of fruits and vegetables per day, and even to 800 grams of fruits and vegetables per day. For reference, this is partly where the 5-a-day recommendation comes from. 400 grams of fruits and vegetables corresponds to roughly 5 servings a day, whereas 800 grams corresponds to roughly 10 servings a day. So nowadays, at the very least, when I'm traveling or anything else, I try to aim for at least 5 servings a day. But more often than not, I go further than this and try to aim for at least 10 servings a day. I have a whole video on this you can check out where I explain some of the things I incorporate into my own diet to make this easier. But things like salads can be great ways to get several servings of fruits and vegetables in at once, for example. Smoothies are also great. You just throw some fruit in a blender and you get 2 or 3 servings of fruit in one go. Minimal preparation time, pretty cheap. It's a great option. Try to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables, but simply identify the ones that you like and have them consistently within your diet. The main theme of this video is habits. Make this a habit. If certain fruits and vegetables are more tasty to you and you like having them more than others, incorporate those. This last one is a bit esoteric. Look, I get it. It's 2025. It's time to lock in, winter arc, all that stuff. And you want to identify your goals and go and crush them. 6-figure income, 20-inch arms, all that. And that's all well and good, but it doesn't necessarily help you as much as you think it does. Goals are overrated and directions and behaviors are underrated. Let me explain. Let's say you want 20-inch arms. How are you going to get there? First, your direction is to get more jacked, gain more muscle. But what are the behaviors that underlie that direction? The direction is getting more jacked, and the behaviors that underlie that direction are to lift consistently and intelligently. I have videos on how to do that. But ultimately, focusing on the behaviors that get you there, which is a process orientation in research, is better than focusing simply on the goal, or a goal orientation. In the research, people who focus on the behaviors required will do better in terms of mental well-being and actually achieving the goal than people who simply focus on the goal and what it takes to achieve it. Those are the 10 plus 1 bonus habit I wish I'd incorporated 10 years ago. A lot of these have strong evidence behind them, and some of them I've just found personally helpful. If you like this style of video, which is a bit less exercise science focused, leave a like below and leave a comment letting me know what sort of content you'd like to see in the future. Dr. Milo, habits, Jordan Peterson, motivational, David Goggins, etc. Until next time.